Dude, that one hit is gonna make it just kill him. Okay, so we're gonna go through, I haven't officially named this, but the magnetic spear field bleed build. It's a setup and punish for single targets, and for area clear, the general skill will do the most of it. You are going to throw in a different skill to help. That is not necessarily bleed focused, but that's okay. So we're going to go in here. We're going to go through the skill gems first. So the core of it is going to be spear field. You stab the ground, it has so much meter length, and it creates one spear per 2 meters of radius. And it's in a cone, so that really focuses how many spears you get. And the beginning to middle of the cone is going to have a similar amount of spears as the end of the cone, but they're going to be closer together because of that. Duration is 10 seconds. Rarely is that going to become an issue. Maximum 70. That usually gives about 2.5 casts of the skill, approximately. This rearm is less important. You're going to be using it so much that them rearming isn't going to be super necessary, and you'll see why. The core part of this build is Spearfield and Titan's Mitts. These are like the core of it. The important part here is that this whole operation works off bleed, which scales off physical, and this gives us a 20% increased global physical damage. But the important part is this knockback direction is reversed. So that means we're going to pull enemies to us instead of knocking them back away. It's important to note that if you change your orientation, they're going to be pulled into still towards you. So if I cast Spearfield towards something, they're going to get pulled towards me. If I move over here and the enemy's over here, they're not going to come downwards. They're going to still come towards me even though this cone is going this direction. So you're essentially a magnet for the knockback. So we're going to put Incision. Incision has a lot of good buffs in the passive tree, mainly for magnitude and chance to bleed, which means that we don't actually need Lacerate, which opens up skill slots. I only have 4 skill slot support gem slots right now, which is cool. Bludgeon is key because that gives us the knockback enemies. We also have 40% more knockback distance. So this is going to ensure what gets us a lot of damage, especially for clear, is that enemies are hitting multiple spears. So this may seem relatively low, it's only 700, but when you're counting like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spears, if you get them all the way here through here, that's 7,000 damage just on that one pull. And you're casting it twice, at least. You have 14 spears. So that's, you're now looking at 14,000 damage almost. Approximately, give or take. Rage is for field clear. An important note here is that there is a support gem swap, and I don't have it in here. It's actually on one of my skills. When you're going into like a boss fight and you know you can't knock back, you're gonna put on Bloodlust. And the reason for that is we set up Incision, and when you get max 10 stacks, that's gonna give us an additional 30% magnitude of bleeding. You're gonna put Bloodlust, so you're not gonna deal bleed anymore with Spearfield. You're instead going to use Rake, which has magnitude additional for distance. And this consume your life flask, you got to be careful, but it's really good. 3% more magnitude of bleeding per life flask charge consumed, and it takes 20, and you get 3% for each charge. So we get 14 flask charges. So we get, what, 40-some% magnitude on top, and we're only dealing physical damage. We only want physical damage. So with the 30% that we get from Incision, on top of the 75% Concoct, the goal is to put a massive bleed onto the enemy. And then we're going to finish off with Blood Hunt, which gets bonus damage for consuming bleed and the size of the bleed. 25% of consumed blood loss has additional unscalable, unfortunate, but physical attack damage. And you get 10% more area effect. It's not super important for this. And for our bosses, this was the hard part really, was getting all of this together. These 3 skills are going to do your boss kills. You're going to put Incision, you're going to Magnitude, and then you're going to Blood Hunt once you get a large enough Blood Hunt. Once you get Magnitude, you get a big enough Magnitude, you're going to Blood Hunt. And this doesn't seem like all that much damage once you get into the late game. And honestly, if it were just based on these numbers, it wouldn't be. And some of you may know what this spear over here does. Tangle Tongue, Forked Spear. This is a super popular spear. A lot of builds are running it right now. You can get the spears super cheap for less crit chance, and they quickly go up to 1 div, 2 div. This is about a 1 to 2 div spear. And that's a critical hit chance. It's a little confusing. I got caught up on this. Forks critical hits, and it makes it seem like when you fork, you get a critical hit. That is not what it means. It essentially means you get double critical chance and what's called a double critical. And that's really, really important. We'll go look at it at a skill because it's easier to read. Alright, so your main hand critical hit chance is only 50%. That's pretty good. It's not bad. Effective chance, though, is 75%. Main hand effective chance for a twice critical hit is 25%. And our critical damage bonus is 300%. All of these numbers by themselves, if you're going for a full crit build, may not be the most impressive. But when you look at the twice critical hit chance, if both rolls succeed, the hit will be a critical hit, and the critical damage bonus will apply twice to that hit. So you're getting an effective 600% critical damage bonus. And with the way bleed magnitude works on your physical damage, that one hit affects your magnitude. So if you get a twice critical hit for 600% critical damage bonus, your bleed is going to be off the chain. Off the chain. You're going to get a huge, huge magnitude, which is why we're not super worried about our flask charges. We don't necessarily want to run out trying to get it on. But for most boss kills these days, especially at endgame, if you don't kill them fast enough, you're probably going to end up dying anyway. You follow that up with a Blood Hunt twice critical, they're done. Like, they are done. This build isn't super tanky, but what it can do for instant damage output once you set it up a bit, so good. We just have some basic additions. Ingenuity. Because of this low damage, this is important to note. Because of this low physical damage for bleed, you pretty much have to stack physical damage on your rings. At least that's the best way I found to do it. I'm also running rondelles. Because of the third finger tree and the bonuses that you get, and the ingenuity, you're going to get plenty of resistances that you need to add for your boots and everything. And this is going to increase our physical damage even further. On top of that, we get increased critical hit chance, skill speed, and 50% increased damage. Is really going to launch us into the stratosphere. And that's the issue with bleed scaling into the late game. It's just getting that pure damage because it's an overtime effect and it's based on your hits. It can be difficult. But with all of these things combined, you can just, you pop them. Like, once you get it set up, they pop. This gives us a critical hit chance on Tailwind. We can stack up to 10 as well as move speed. So that's just getting us even more usefulness out of it. Just some general evasion, resistances. If you have the money to go into Energy Shield, you'd probably be a lot more tanky. I don't have it yet. So that's that. We have Kill and Unique for drop chance, Chaos damage. We can probably switch this one out because my Chaos resist recently went up. And then Frozen. For this build and skill speed, slows and frozen are your enemies, because we have only 1300 health and 26 shield right now. It is not that good. Into the passives, we've got third finger. Well, we have third finger, and then we have the 25 increased bonuses. This is going to give us a lot of staying power for those random hits that we're going to take clearing. And then Blood Boil gives us additional. We're going into attack speed and area of effect and projectile. That's Lightning Spear is good for proccing this, but the reason why we run Caltrops when we can is because we dodge so much, because we're not super tanky, and we're pulling enemies in. So those Caltrops will give us some extra damage. And we go in through down here, critical. We're gonna cook them. They're gonna be cooked. It's damage bonus. Global defenses kinds of hurts us again with that staying power. Damage bonus, critical hit chance, evasion, dexterity to run the build because we're going pretty far out. Currently I'm running strength boots because they're cheaper for the move speed and resistances. Critical damage bonus, critical hit chance. If I level up a few more, that'll give me a little bit more. This is the important tree right here for incision. Enemies who apply incision take 2% increased physical damage per incision. So stacks to physical damage will increase your magnitude because your magnitude is based on your physical damage. So that is very, very important. Same thing here, critical hit chance against bleeding enemies. This is really important for when we go in for Blood Hunt. Magnitude, we're hitting critical hits, so we're getting higher magnitudes. Just some evasion, especially if you've been hit, that's going to spike. So if you survive it, you're pretty much not going to survive slam attacks, like, period. You're not going to survive them. That's okay. Duration of damaging ailments, not as important as the increased damage with hits. Because we are hitting so often with spears, that's just going to be close to a flat 30% increased. Because that spear field is going to almost instantly give us a bleed. Then we're going to instantly get the increased damage. Damaging ailments cannot be inflicted on you while you already have one. That's just a little protection for field clear. Increased magnitude of damaging ailments you inflict. Just a general buff. All the way through here, little buffs. This is good to make sure we get consistent damage and infliction against rare and uniques. The one enemy type that we really struggle against is evasive enemies. So that accuracy will also help. We struggle currently with having the stats to run everything, so this helps reduce that. I don't run a lot of stats on my gear because we're trying to focus on damage and resistances. This increased leech isn't what we get this for, but this physical damage. And if the distilled emotions are anything to go off of, this diable isolation makes it like until you're rich and famous, you're probably not going to afford that isolation. So this 40% increased damage is going to be a very necessary buff. We've got the added gems. These aren't super good right now. This has the hazard damage and evasion rating that we want. Like this hole right here, this is what we're running it for. I just haven't spent a lot of money on gems. But you want magnitude of bleeding, you want evasion, you want hazards. Those are the good. They don't all roll on the same type of gems, so you can play with going into magnitude of bleeding, global physical. These two combined, if you can get them, they're expensive. But if you can get global physical and magnitude of bleeding, that's going to be huge. Honestly, global physical damage increase is probably going to be the best because it's going to increase your physical damage, which will increase your bleed, which will increase your magnitude. And here, I think I just threw this in, but knockback distance and magnitude of bleed. So we could definitely, that's probably going to be the next part of gear that we focus on. Upgrading it. So this whole thing. And the important part, this gave me a huge bump in DPS. The anointment is staggering palm, which is critical damage bonus, knockback distance, physical damage. All three things that this build relies on. So essential. It does. I mean, if you're not going to run rondelles because it's difficult, to get elemental resistances. If you have the money, it does cost a isolation, I believe. Let's see. That's Stupefy. Yeah. Isolation. Despair and Guilt are relatively cheap. Guilt's definitely cheap. Isolation is going to be the buster right there. There's a couple other good options that you can take that don't rely on it. Is critical hit chance and damage against rares, something I considered. I don't run Dazed, but you look around, you can find some. If you can get crit chance, damage, or physical, you're going to be okay. So that's the basics of the build. I think I have a couple clips that I'll play just to show the pop when they're going popping. But that's the build. It's a lot of fun. You don't see a whole lot of people playing this type of build.